Hi, good morning, everyone. So this is the working group 4 meeting for SIG 1. Here we are discussing a few agenda points which we have right now for the today listed down in this document. So one of them is update on the creation of the repo and project for the POCs, SDK and other operators which we do. So I think Tal, are you there?
Yes, I am.
Yes. So would you like to update everyone or?
Uh, not too much to say except that we've basically resistance to creating a separate group has faded. So we will be creating a separate, sorry, not group. I keep saying group. I mean organization in GitHub called Nefio-experimental, where it will be possible to contribute code under the CLA, but with very lax requirements. So basically anybody in the community who wants to put in an experiment or a POC or something would be able to do that. So we're working with Linux Foundation to just set it up. So as soon as it's set up, we'd be able to all use it.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much for your effort. And I have updated the same here. The second topic is that I have shared the SDK design document with everyone. People can review it officially, comment on it if there is anything to be commented on. So there was a task given to me in one of the SIG automation meeting that I should present the design document for that. So I have done that, and it's available. I have shared the link. Yeah, so that's the second point. Third point is I think Fiacra is working on has moved to operator SDK. So if he wants to give some update on that, that will be great because I see some which we have discussed in Slack. So maybe he can just brief us. Uh, if I'm not pronouncing right, Fiacra, right? Are you there? I think are you there?
He's there and he's on mute, I think.
Yeah, I'll try to unmute him.
Sorry. Hello. Yeah. Sorry, I just had to step away for a second.
Right. So yeah.
Apologies.
So you can update us on your experiment on operator SDK and whatever findings you have for that. We saw a lot of discussion.
Yeah. Okay. I have a quick demo if that's suitable.
Yes. Sure.
Okay.
I'll try. Let me see. Make you host. Right.
Okay. Try screen share. Desktop 2. Okay. Can you see my screen? You can?
Yes, I can see.
Yeah.
Please.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so I guess we have this original document which we did up, so it's looking at the different approaches, etc. from Kieran and ourselves. I guess the operator SDK kind of fits into this. Maybe correct me if I'm wrong, but yeah, essentially having some kind of operator to manage the Helm charts, and then looking at. So this is your document, Tyler, and Stephen, I guess. So I guess we're looking at option 4 here, in terms of wrapping the Helm in an operator, and using the operator SDK. So yeah, I'll run through quickly. Can you guys just make it a little bit bigger? Is that visible? Okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, what it did was, so yeah, I'm just using the one of the workload clusters to deploy onto. So so I'm just yeah, so I'm using workload or edge 1 if you like, so that I'm using the edge 1 context to deploy the charts onto, because I guess the sorry, let me catch my thought. But yeah, so the clusters themselves are kind of they're compatible with the Helm charts, if you like, related to the GTP 5G module, and other bits and pieces. So they seem to deploy better on these clusters. So I'll just run through it quickly. So here I'm just going to, no, that didn't copy. Why didn't I copy? So I'm just cloning the Helm charts from directly from the Orange open source GitHub. And then I need to check out, I pushed the PR. I wonder, will I have a look at that PR for a second? Just so we can see. So I had to fix up the dependencies on the actual chart.yaml. They had no explicit dependencies, and the SDK, the tool was failing due to that. So I've added a kind of a workaround and just a local repo for the charts. I think it's happy enough without the repository entry, but it doesn't like a missing versions entry in the chart.yaml. So I'm just, so check that PR right there now. I'll just make so I'm making a kind of project directory to deploy or to run the operator SDK within. And here I am, so yeah, I'm just running an init using the Helm plugin. I guess others may have played around with this before. This is my first time using this SDK. Yeah, giving it a domain, a group version, and then I'm pointing towards the FreeFileGC chart that I just cloned. So it fails on the first run because for some reason it unpacks the. So if I look at the chart itself, so it unpacks the subcharts in TarGZ form, and for some reason the tool doesn't like that. I know I linked some of the issues that I found online that have been logged related to this, and yeah, so one of the workarounds. So I think either Stephen or yeah someone else pointed it out. So it's just so I'm just what I have to do is essentially untar them and just remove the old TarGZs, so they're basically there in kind of flat form, if you like. So I'll go back up to the top level directory, and here, so I'm just running this is the create API and just pointing towards the chart again. So yeah, what is it doing? So it creates a load of RBAC roles and cluster roles, service counts, etc. We could probably have a look at the so this is what it and yeah, I have a gap in my knowledge in terms of customize and how it works. I kind of little understanding of it, but it seems to use customize quite a bit. So it generates this kind of base CRD. This is quite bare as it stands, but as you'll see in a second, and I think Stephen and others pointed out that essentially what it does, it takes it generates a CRD directly from the values.yaml for the actual custom resource. Yeah, so it's just this customization stuff here. So this within this one, so we'll have a look at that. Config default. Yeah, so it's just giving it a namespace, prefix, adding the relevant resources, so your CRD or back in your manager directories. Oh yeah, also I forgot to mention. So I've run through the kind of the installation process, which is or the whatchamacallit, the setup. So prerequisites here for setting up the install of the tool itself. And also we need to be able to push an image to a registry. So I've logged into we're using this is our kind of play sandbox registry, if you like, within Nordics. So I'm just I'll tag the image there, and I'll run so there's a make file here also. What does the make file have? So yeah, so we have lots of stuff here, but I guess what we're interested in is the so Docker. Where's
Yeah,
the
maybe,
doc-
maybe quickly, it's weird. Why did you build your own operator?
why did I build my own operator?
No, because I played a little bit with it as well, and they have the Helm operator, which is a Red Hat project, which basically takes in all the charts
Hmm.
and the values, so without
Yeah.
you have to build your own operator. So they have
Yeah,
a Helm.
so
That's what he's doing, isn't it?
so yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So I'll just jump through. Yeah, so I'll maybe I'm kind of skipping
Free
around a bit,
5GC
but
it's free 5GC operator, the Helm operator that
yeah.
Red Hat.
So
Okay, it's the same.
this build. So the project itself, when I run the I was just showing some of the stuff in the Makefile. So essentially, yeah. So we have so we what's the Docker? So what I'm gonna run now is Docker build, Docker push. So it builds the image, pushes it, and later on we use the deploy to actually deploy the operator controller. So it's using customize, and it's building from this directory that whatever's under config default, and then applying to the cluster.
But
Sorry,
if you go to the deployment file, do you see the Helm operator inside or not?
the deployment file. So what do we got? We have
Yeah, here. So
so
if you
from here, it basically uses customize and uses whatever's in this one.
or if
What's
you
in this
deploy it,
custom?
just see what's in it when you deploy it. It's probably easier.
Yeah. So okay. Yeah. So did I tag the image? I think I did.
I just
Tag
wanted
the image.
to just continue. We'll come back to it. Sorry.
Yeah, no problem. I'll just run through. Yeah, I don't want to take up the whole meeting. So essentially, just we're building the image here, pushing it to the registry, and then we run make deploy. So it should then. So what it does is, so it's pulling out everything in this, as I said, in the the config default directory, and applying it to the cluster. So what do we get? We get a namespace. This is your CRD, service account, role, cluster role, stuff, service, and a deployment. So hopefully now we should have the operator up and running. Yeah, so there we have the operator up and running. Sorry, clear that. So that's your operator running. I'll do a log.
Can you do maybe a kubectl describe
Describe.
of deployment to see which image you run?
Yeah. Uh, what's my namespace? I need a pod. Yeah. So essentially, it's pulling. So it runs this as a kube proxy as well by default. Obviously to interact with the K8 API, and then it's running this operator image that I've just built. Under the hood, I guess you're looking for what's under the hood, Vim, which we can have a look at in a second. But first, I'll just run through. So it also gives you a sample. So what's in the samples directory? Terminal config samples. Yeah, so we have this one. For some reason, this one was quite bare.
Yes, because it doesn't know what to put inside.
Yeah, so it's just that's your kind that it creates, and I guess it's it leaves it open here for a user to define the spec. But this one essentially is a copy of the values.yaml. Sorry, I'll just do less on that. Samples charts. Yeah, so here, so you have your deploy toggles, and then obviously everything else from within all of the values.yaml and config maps, etc. So it is quite unwieldy, but So we'll deploy it anyway, and we can have a look. Samples charts. So that's your custom resource deployed. If we get the pods, oh yeah, I forgot to mention as well. I had to create a namespace as well with whatchamacallit, kind of loose privileges, what's the word?
Privileged.
So yeah, sorry,
Permissive. Yeah.
privileged, whatever you may call it. Yeah, your pod security privileges. To be, because I think the UPF requires, you know, a privileged whatchamacallit space to run in. So there you go, everything's up and running. Obviously this is on a single cluster. We haven't gotten to test the ping, etc. I'm pretty sure that I've done things like you know, you can register. I can register hopefully this runs okay. So if I register a subscriber, I'll just check the logs on this guy. No, I'm looking for the UPF. No, I think I have to restart the pod and it'll pick up the. Yeah, we're looking for setting up the tunnel right on the UPF, which is fine, you know. But I guess, you know, proof point is, you know, so it's deployed the charts.
Yeah, that looks great actually.
Yeah. Like, and I guess that like the CRD itself. So what do we got? So we have, sorry. So this is your custom resource defined. And yeah, like I said, if we do a describe on him, it's just a, you know, it's a big lump of
It's
thing.
basically your value is that
Yeah,
YAML.
exactly.
Mhm.
Sorry, FreeFileGC, lots of FreeFileGC, no, bin to FreeFileGC. What am I doing wrong there? Namespace, FreeFileGC sample.
But it's for all the charts, right?
Yeah, all the charts. So you get your NAT, you know, so you have everything here. Even all the config maps. I could scroll for a while there, but yeah, so it's just a big, massive blob.
So that's basically
of everything.
one operators for all the NFs, but it's a really huge input.
Yeah, like I guess
but
there is.
what I'm wondering is the following, right? While playing with it, is that depending on the values file that you change, will it re-render everything? I think so.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. So we have, it has capacity to, sorry, where am I going? It has capacity to, where's tutorial?
Because here there is like 10 charts under the hood, right? It makes it
Yeah.
one big massive thing, right?
I mean, alternatively, you can still put different charts on different, you know, repo or whatever directory, and then render each operator just looking at one NF itself.
Yeah, like there is obviously whether you do one operator per chart, or you know, obviously it has capacity to set overrides, you know, override values in the actual. It has this watches. Sorry, that's another. I'm still getting to grips with, you know, what everything is, you know, kind of doing. But you know, so your watches YAML,
but it's
you
one
to
big.
extend
So
the API.
what I did not see, and maybe it's just I see, you can do one big operator with everything like one big massive thing, right? You can do an operator per chart, but can you also do what we did is like a dedicated controller with a dedicated input per chart in the same operator. So the multi-controller.
So I think we had that discussion. I had the discussion with him on Slack too. I doubt it, because the only, for the CLI anyway, the way I look at that is from researching on the CLI only lets you init. The operator SDK init is the only thing you can input a chart, not create APIs, because that operation would be creating APIs. If you use Skill Builder or Operator SDK to build a a controller as a go routine off of your main operator, the regular workflow is keep on adding it using create API, create API, create API.
Yeah.
So create API
I don't.
it doesn't allow
I
you
think
to
there would be.
input a handle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think you would probably have to recreate the image would have to be rebuilt and deployed, wouldn't it?
Yeah,
to
and it's
to
more
update
than
the
that too,
operator.
because they also you will have to modify the main.go and all that stuff. There's some manual process in there too. So
Yeah.
I don't think the
Sorry,
tools automate that.
Sandeep has his hand up there for a long time.
Oh, sorry.
You
No,
probably
I
can't see that,
I can't see it. No, how do I see the
Yeah.
chat
Yeah,
properly?
you cannot see that. No,
You
no.
can't see it now.
I
Sorry,
just
Yeah.
wanted
Sandeep.
to, yeah. So
Go ahead.
I also had some little experiment with that. So I just wanted to confirm my understanding. So we got an operator. So what are the benefits we can take out of this operator? Can we modify that? Can we take a intent-based or kind of deployment? So we have a CR, a custom CRD, CR from the custom CRD, and we input some intent there. So can I modify the operator and take some control over it? Because that's the essence of the operator, right? We get a control, right? So do we get the control here, or what do I say?
So the operator requires you to input a Helm chart. So you can write a lot of stuff leading into the operator that renders the input, right? So in this case, it's actually it's really locked in because it generates a CLD off of your values.yaml. So your input to the operator is already the values.yaml, and then internally the logic is translating that and sending it into the chart that it's managing. So that's the workflow. So if you want to, for example, if you want to add like nephew OCLs to be something to be input, either you modify your charts, which is not the intent here, because if you do that, you might as well just run an operator, right? Or if not, then maybe in a management clusters you translate that into values.yaml. So there are certain things that you can get around it, but it is sort of limited. I would say that, yes.
So in that case, I just wanted to confirm there's no counter on that, but I wanted to understand what will be the difference between this approach and simple Helm install approach.
Not much. So we have exposed a custom resource basically as an input.
But I guess the operator itself, like I've no preference really, but I think the operator itself would have things like reconciliation built in. It would have like
no, it just renders the Helm chart. If you look, into the code.
So the reconciliation is.
But we can edit the custom resource, and it will modify.
So it would keep on monitoring your CLD changes, modification and updates, and that's what it reconciles against. It doesn't, because it's Helm and the backend, so it's not like it's continuously have application specific logic to monitor anything to say that you deviate from your intent, because it's the only thing of the intent is there's user input changes of the intent, and then it renders that. So that was it.
At the end of the day, it's a wrapper around Helm.
Yeah, it is.
Basically, that's what this is. It's just a wrapper around Helm to make it look like Kubernetes, but at the end you still run Helm, because they actually, if I looked into the code, they actually execute Helm.
Yes, it's a Helm client basically. Yeah.
It's so it's you basically have a wrapper around Helm, right? And one thing that sorry, I'm jumping maybe the line, but the thing that I was asking myself is that if you change the chart, right, what will happen? Because you basically, the chart is part, so you basically wrap the chart in your Docker
so
file,
if you change the chart,
right?
you basically have to recreate a next version of the operator.
Correct.
Yes, but it's very inconvenient, right? Because if you look to the operation, why should I have to build a new operator if I have a new chart? For me, the workflow should be point to a new chart and it will happen, right?
Yeah, but I guess no matter how we work towards Helm, it's always going to be kludgy, because I think I said one of the messages there, Helm doesn't really have a schema, so everybody, You know, so when you write your chart, you're in effect gonna have to do some sort of kind of do-it-yourself schema.
No, I think Helm. I mean, my research told me that in Helm, the values file, you could write a schema, but nobody does it. It seems.
Yeah.
So,
well, people use naming conventions and ways of doing it, and whatever.
No, correct. But I saw the values you could apply a schema, but I haven't seen many. Actually have seen no examples of it.
Yeah.
But at the end, what I'm trying to get to is at the end of the day, we are still using Helm as is at the end of the day, right? There's no real change.
Yes. Yep.
Yeah,
So
I
they're not
agree
talking
with
about-
Sorry,
yeah.
Tal is the hand up there.
I can't see raised hands, guys. So maybe
Oh, yeah. Sorry, maybe Wim finished your thought. I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, I was done. Yeah. For me, the upgradability and the whole management is a bit.
Yeah, I agree with all the comments here. So I last tested this maybe 2 years ago, and I see it hasn't really improved since I last tested it. I want to point out, I shared the source code for the actual plugin. You know, it's all open source, of course. I think whatever we do in FEO SDK, let's assume that we're going in this direction despite the problems. We can fix this. You know, we can either create our own plugin, you know, that generates things according to what we want, including Nefio specific things, right? Somebody mentioned, you know, customize here. Well, that's just part of the scaffolding in the source code. We can create our own kind of Helm generator that doesn't do any scaffold, doesn't use customize at all, change the whole RBAC, etc. I mean, we can use the existing code as a template for us to create a Nefio specific Helm wrapper, right? Or we can, you know, add another plugin that does something on top of this. I guess I'm treating this more of like not something that's immediately usable right now. I mean, it is usable, despite some workflow issues, but more of think of this as an approach of something we can potentially build on. And what I'm hoping to do is also talk to folk at Red Hat and see if Red Hat itself, you know, Red Hat is involved, of course, in FEO and getting more involved, and see if they would be interested in putting some effort in making this plugin maybe more suitable to our requirements. So I'm just pointing that out. You know, we don't have to treat this as here's a method that we immediately use, but something that we can build on, right? That's it.
Okay. I think Wim, you want to go first?
I don't know. There is 2 others. I don't know whether I'm first.
Yeah, go ahead. I have a question. Yes, please.
Okay. Yeah. So so the way I see, for me, the whole thing is very valuable, right? So and I think so that's why I started to look into the details myself, right? Because I wanted to understand a little bit better what was going on under the hood. And I also think there is good things that are here that we can build upon, or I take pieces of it, right? I mean, if you look what I did as a prototype, I actually looked at this. But if I look to what we want to do, is we want to reuse charts at the end of the day, right? That is our main requirement that we are trying to accommodate, right? How we wrap it and how that doesn't mean that we have to use Helm to install it, right? We have to use the Helm rendering or the chart rendering mechanism. That is going to be essential because that's what we want to reuse at the end of the day. But everything around it is, for me, we could decide to use other mechanism other than Helm to do so, right? So from that perspective, I think this is a good it's a good example on how or what we can do with Helm, right? And I think this learns or gives us a lot of insight of what are all the different options. And I think what I would like to do is take the best of breed of all of this stuff and then assemble something by which we can then use charts within the Nefio framework. That's how I look at it as the exercise.
Yeah, I just like to caveat, you know, the in terms of my our kind of looking into this is pretty, you know, that there may be more people with better expertise in how to generate what we want in terms of using the tool. I'm not sure. But this is just the first, like, I only got this working today, so you know, there may be you know, advances. This is iteration 1, if you like, or you know, we can decide whether it's worth the next step would potentially be to look to refactor the 365GC charts to make them more usable, for want of a better word.
So this is great, because as an input, we would know that if we were asking. As Wim said, this is all in place because we wanted to onboard people very quickly, current existing network function vendors. So if we require a lot of changes to the charts, it's definitely a data point to tell us that this may not be a good option. Right.
Okay.
Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah, maybe sorry to jump in, but I agree. I mean, we cannot afford. I have the feeling zero change is probably, I think, is also maybe too easy, if you will. I would say we have to put some, I mean, because see, all these charts today, I don't know how it is for Ericsson, but I know for us in Nokia, we generate everything we need, whether it's infra or whether it's NF, we generate everything in the chart. And I always have told from, and this is 4 years ago, when this whole thing started, I basically told the people this, I don't think this is really good, because you're trying to dictate what, how everything works around you. And I don't believe, I mean, okay, we have 2 sets of deployments. We have a deployment where basically everybody takes everything from Nokia, right? And that's probably also true for Ericsson. And it's like a black box, if you will. And that scenario doesn't really matter. But I think here we are trying to, in Nefio, we are trying to build a system which has, where infra and NF are decoupled, right? And as such, we have to have mechanisms in place to allow for that flexibility. And that's, for me, the only thing that I would like to see the vendors potentially, and including us, change in their charts. And that would be the same here, right? So the flag would be, okay, if Nefio don't render this, that's what I would do in these charts. That's all you have to do.
Yeah,
Okay,
agreed.
so,
Yeah.
Okay.
I won't take up any more of the meeting. If that's, I'll stop sharing, and maybe, or if there's more discussion, but
Yeah, I have just a quick clarification on the overall support, helm support, maybe from Tal or everyone. That first of all, thank you, Fiaka, for this exercise. It's really helpful. The point which I want to take it from what Wim has said, that we want to support Helm chart, right? So we want to render it. So that's the first point. Second point, I want to understand that what is the ultimate goal of Nephew in terms of deploying the NF? Is it always via controller with the full-fledged Go code? Is it the ultimate goal? And these things, Helm things, are just intermediate supporting things, or what is the vision in this? This is for my clarification, actually, nothing to do with this today's presentation.
So maybe because you called on me, I'll give a quick answer.
Yeah.
We're going to decide together. However, Google's position has been pretty clear from the start that we consider Helm to be a dead end for the industry, at least as it is right now. Who knows? Maybe Helm can evolve as well, but it's hard to see it changing its basic philosophy. So we see a lot of benefits to moving to an operator-based approach. However, you mentioned Go code. Nobody said that an operator has to be built in Go. So something I'm going to be doing soon is actually sharing another document with everybody, similar to the one I did about onboarding options, looking at SDK options and looking at the technologies that we have available there. Now, as Wim pointed out, something nice about this wrapper approach is that it's based on the operator SDK. So we're kind of killing 2 birds in 1 stone, and maybe having a more refined software stack, right? Instead of using, say, a separate tool for Helm, Flux, or something else, and then a separate tool for our Nefio SDK, we can put everything under the operator SDK. So there's a certain advantage there. Operator SDK also gives us so many freebies. You know, it also supports Ansible operators, which is very interesting, right? You can write all your deployment scripts as Ansible playbooks, including configuration, right, workflows. So you could potentially do much more, and you can mix and match, right? Because it's all plugins under the SDK. So you can create an operator that, say, deploys Helm and then runs an Ansible playbook when you need to for, you know, post stand-up configuration or similar, right? If you have to do netconf or other things, right? So there are all these interesting avenues to approach with operator SDK. But also, you know, something that's dear to my heart is actually exploring options other than Go, because I know that Go itself as a language is itself a blocker, right? There's just not a lot of knowledge of it. It's kind of a specific language. Network developers often don't know Go, and they have to learn a new language just to be involved. I know a lot of people learn to Go for the first time just to participate in Nefio. There's great work in Python, right? The OpenAir interface work that Sagar was doing was based on the KOPF operator SDK, which is 100% Python based, and it's quite beautiful code. If you look at the code Sagar did, is in many ways much more elegant than the Go code that we wrote, right, for operators. So there are a few avenues we can take into it, right? Another option is maybe operator SDK can be enhanced with Python support, make Python a first-class citizen. Could kept functions be written in Python? So there are a lot of ways to move forward here. I think we need to keep adding more options and research on the table, right? We still need to move forward, and you know, we can move forward without blocking looking at other options. But yeah, anyway, that's my point.
Yeah. So the point I understand is that we have to move toward the code side of it, right? Whether it's a Go or Python, the control will be in the code side, right? That's the vision, right?
Yes, you know, this is, you know, Wim said this as well too, right? We have a certain concern that if we make Helm a first-class citizen in Nefio, that is supporting Helm charts as is. I mean, there's something very attractive about it, because it means that vendors that have Helm charts can immediately start using Nefio. You know, Flux, I think, is the best example we have so far of that approach. But ConfigSync also has native support for Helm, which we haven't really explored, but you know, we can, especially for Google users, Google Cloud users. Where does it take us? You know, if we want Nefio to really move us forward, you know, move the industry forward, then it means weaning us off Helm. But I know this is a controversial statement, and I think we as a community will have to really consider what we want the legacy of Nefio to be here, what we're trying to do. And you know, it could be somewhere in between. And as I mentioned too, we can pick multiple options, right? We could give this approach of wrapping a Helm operator, but for vendors who really don't have time to even do this, we can support Flux in some way, right? At the end of it, but you know, that's an extra maintenance burden, right? Because it means an Nefio has two paths, both have to be tested and supported. Lots of trade-offs we have to consider here, right? So I think this is just the beginning of the discussion and not the end of it.
Yeah. Thank you. I think I got that point.
Yeah, I think I'm next.
Liam has his hands up. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I honestly, yeah. The point is, I think though that just because something, you know, just because there's Helm there in the picture, yeah, you know, as long as it's mapped or hidden behind an operator, you know, or complies with the, you know, it's been what's this? A CRD, an FUR CRD is basically an API, you know, when it comes down to it. And then instances in, you know, so if there's something that can actually work with that API and then can work behind the scenes with Helm, you know, I don't see what's wrong with that. Certainly as an interim solution, you know. Isn't it better to have that and have Nefio out there handling the stuff that Nefio handles, rather than saying, sorry, we won't have any Helm at all in the picture, we're going to, you know, we're just not going to work with it, you know. Now, that could mean that in some circumstances we actually have to, I mean, the one thing for sure, Helm makes it easier to do, it is easier to have bad, you know, to have bad exposure and bad modeling in Helm than it is in Nephio, because Nephio is structured better with CRDs. But you know, you can still have bad CRDs too, I would guess. But there's no, it may be that we have to actually redesign Helm in the interim, you know, to because of the legacy that's out there, and because that's the way that people have their tools and methods set up in their companies or in the vendors have or whatever. We may have to have a small step first, where we actually make our Helm charts or values that YAML more kind of Nephio CRD compliant, and then work with something like Flux or the operator SDK towards the Helm charts. And you know, as a way of getting Nephio out there and getting Nephio proven, I don't see a lot wrong with that myself. Just that's me.
Yeah. So Leah, I raised my hand again. So here is my view. First of all, I think we have to come to terms of what we mean with Helm. If you say use Helm, for me, what we really want to reuse is the chart part of Helm, right? So that is what if you say Helm, that's for me the piece of it, because now if you look into, and that's why I'm making this explicit, is that if you take Helm with Flux and Helm with Operator SDK, you're also implying the way that Helm is used to do the installation. Okay. Mm-hmm. And for me, that I think we have to, I would like to question, right? Second, what I want to say is that if you say that you want to reuse the chart, you implicitly say you also need to reuse the values.yaml to a certain extent, right? So the chart and the values, they go together because that's the input to the charts, right? So now, so what is the, or if you look to Tal's document, I think he laid down the length of the different options. So, and I think here's, in my view, the difference between, not necessarily between operator SDK necessarily, but like if you take Flux, right? It takes a chart and puts that into the Nephio system. So here is where I'm coming from on the Helm installation side. So why I am questioning whether we need to do that. I think Nephio made a stamp to say operators is the way to go, okay? Which means that you will have a way to do lifecycle management of KRM resources in a non-Helm way. I think because I connotate the two. So if you only take the chart part of Helm, you can still, the whole lifecycle management of the resources that are rendered from there, you could use a generic mechanism that can be used for non-Helm chart and for Helm chart, right? And when you do so, you kind of come into a scenario where you only want, or at least that's where my head is only use the chart part, and the whole lifecycle management and the deployment and how all of that gets together is done not through Helm, right? That would be my suggestion for the time being. And that also means that, for example, if you do so, you can actually build a wrapper on top of the Helm chart, whether it happens in the management cluster or on the workload cluster. I think, in all honesty, I think it should happen on the workload cluster. So I see this Helm chart being wrapped in the Nephio SDK, right? And you should be able to reuse the Helm chart as much as you can, as they are today, maybe with a very minor change, as we will discussing. But as such, you basically reuse the full philosophy of what we started with in Nephio, but you are allowed to use the Helm chart almost as is, and that implies the values.yaml file that is associated with it. And that's how I see the decoupling. So if we talk about Helm, we should say, do you talk about both the chart as well as the deployment side of things, right? To make that explicit. Because if you really decouple and only focus on the chart, you have lots of options. You have many more options than the one that we have shown right now.
I still have a worry about things like Helm hoops and plugins and the life. Yeah, if something is life cycle managed in a different way, that could be even more tricky than working like towards the CRD, which is basically which is kind of a exploded.
But the hooks, I don't think are support.
Yeah, I think
either.
sorry. I think for Helm additional tool support or feature support is definitely debatable. Whether or not we actually wanted to support it. I just thought that we were a little beyond debating whether or not we want to have Helm chart support for at least deployment of network functions. I thought that was already a yes.
And for existing things like that, new things is a whole other question. Yeah, new stuff is a whole other question.
So the lifecycle management of Helm charts and all that stuff, maybe not. Maybe it's not something we would be looking into supporting, all the extraneous things. I do want us to be mindful that, I mean, I would like to encourage the community to think about, if we have any Helm support, it's more of a transitional thing. We would like to have network function vendors and other projects to be understanding that Helm support is there, but then it's more like getting you into the next step. Well, namely actually creating an operator and whatever is needed on the management cluster to onboard. So this is pretty much, I think, the community stand for our side, from actually more SIG2 in general side. It's not a long-term thing, and not long-term meaning that it's not like will long-term thinking that every single little Helm features that you use would have to be integrated into Nepio or Nepio SDK, and then you would continue to develop on the Helm charts, taking new Helm features, thinking that Nepio would also be adapting that. I think that's asking a lot. But then, because there's a lot of existing Helm charts to deploy, I think the community has spoken that we are willing to support it, but it's not like, it's not a major feature train where we'll continuously supporting everything that is related to Helm moving forward. At least that's not my thinking. And that's not my take in terms of what we as a community agree on. Anyway, sorry.
Etal, you have something?
Yeah, I want to point out that I have a lot of sympathy for vendors during these kinds of transitions, right? Because right now vendors are supporting sometimes hundreds of Helm charts. There's a very carefully versioned, very carefully tested and certified, and this is the packaging format for Kubernetes, right? And what we're saying here, well, Nepio is asking you to maintain maybe 2 different packaging formats at the same time. The burden is enormous. But I pointed out maybe something interesting in the chat just now. One way to do the transition is actually the opposite of what we're saying right now, right? We're saying, well, have an operator actually use the Helm chart, which Stephen and I think others as well, we're not so happy with, because it means Helm is still the basis, right? Helm is the validated version, and an operator is just a wrapper. So there's yes. something that doesn't seem very valuable about it. But if you take the opposite approach and start building an operator, then your Helm chart, instead of deploying all the resources, deploys the operator, which deploys the resources, right? So you still have complete support for customers who have, orchestrators, et cetera, and have a workflow that uses Helm charts, but the operator becomes an implementation detail. However, it's an implementation detail that will eventually allow you to wean yourself off Helm. Yeah, another option.
Yeah, so maybe Tal, just to highlight another point, on the same page, right, as you were saying. So I can share you a story that happened recently in our organization, which is, I mean, at the moment we are merely focusing on getting a network function up and running, right? Now, there is in the meantime also requirements to do canaries, to do upgrades and what have you, right? Don't think, so a Helm chart will not be able to do these type of things, right? So what was funny actually as a story in my view that is interesting to share is, in order to do the canaries and to the upgrades, what we now had to do is figuring out what we deployed with the Helm chart, right? And I said, why do we have to do it that way, right? We can do other ways of it. So in other words, what I'm trying to say is that if you look to the full life cycle of a network function, then Helm chart is not going to be sufficient, right? And I think it's better to, I think what we are trying to do here with this working group is say, okay, we want to be able to reuse the Helm chart that we have, right? But we want to move people towards an operator-based approach while allowing you to reuse the Helm chart. And I think with what I'm trying to do, that's how I would like us to see progress, because then we can reuse what we have. But you see that Helm charts, if you want to look at the whole spectrum of lifecycle management of a network function, will never be sufficient. And I think we have to build towards the latter rather than the former. Okay, I'll stop here, Liam.
Yeah, thanks, Tal and Wim. Tal, you made a very good point there about organizations and investment. But like in a way, Helm is this thing that's out there. It's got a huge install base. Nephew is coming in, so I mean, really, the question I get asked, what's Nephew? Well, we've gone past that now. People kind of have an idea. But how can we use Nephew to solve our problems? And that's the sort of question you get asked. And so if you want to carve out a corner for Nephew, where Nephew can really be used very well, I think it's in the it's in the deployment of it's in the cluster workload deployment. And if we can make that work with Helm, then it gives Nephew a foothold in the organization, and from there it can expand. That's my view of, say, if you actually want to be a kind of evangelist for Nephew in my organization anyway. That's how I would be saying it. But that means it's just not because of the investment in Helm. To actually talk about even replacing Helm with Nephew would be would be a little bit premature yet, in my opinion.
Yeah, but Liam, I think, sorry to jump the line, but what we are all saying is we want to reuse, we want to have Nephew be able to use Helm chart, right? That was our mission. I think we are saying yes to that.
Yes.
Yep.
And then
what we are discussing, I think, how to do that.
Yeah.
And there is what you say. You could say there has been approach like operator SDK Flux, right? But there is other approaches as well, and we are basically debating how, not if, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's what we are doing, I think, at the moment.
Yeah, yeah, but then we should address. I think if we try and use Nephew in the place where Nephew solves the problems, solves problems that's out there with, say, maybe lots of small clusters and things like that. It could be somewhere it'd be very useful, and working with the infrastructure that's there rather than the big bang is it's an easier message to say.
Yeah, but if you use the infrastructure as is, then you're basically saying I don't need Nephew.
No, we're not saying that. We're just saying Nephew need. There are certain things that are really difficult to do in Helm, and then an evolution story for that is to try that Nephew potentially could be very, very useful for. So we attack those problems first, and then you expose the parts of the Helm charts that are troublesome, so that they can be manipulated with Nephew, and then you then gradually Nephew gets a foothold, and Nephew becomes people see how good Nephew is and how it can be used for these things. Yeah. Sorry if I'm kind of muttering now, but
yeah, I think to summarize this, I think everybody is more or less on the same page that we want to go towards the sorry. I mean, just a minute.
Can I add a point? I think we lost him.
I think Sandeep needs to shut down the audio for a moment, or
yeah. So kind of we're about the time for this meeting, and kind of we are in the same page, and more or less we want to go toward operator-based approach where we have more control. It can be Python, it can be Go, Right now, we are working in this group to support the transitional phase of supporting help. So more or less, we are all in the same page. And what to use for that can be Flux, can be anything else, operator SDK, maybe some other converter tool which we have, but that's different thing. But ultimately, we want to go towards the scenario when we have full control in the code, Python, Go, whatever, right? I think we're all on the same page then.
I think so too. I just want to add a point to Liam's, talking about the value in general. All of this discussion is about delivery mechanism, right? And KRM resources and managing KRM resources. That's a lot of what we focused on in R1. But at least I have a vision for Nefio that goes beyond just KRM. I think a lot of the telco challenges is, okay, we stand up a network function, but now the real fun begins in terms of configuration. There's a lot of stuff in terms of managing networks and planes and stuff that happens on the edge cluster, Netcoff, GNMI. There's all these technologies and standards and policies that are very, very specific to the telco workloads that we haven't really started yet. We're starting to kind of develop POCs to look at these things, right? O2 interfaces, ORAN interfaces, etc. So a Nefio SDK, we're very careful, and I know Stephen is especially careful to call it not an operator SDK, but a Nefio SDK. Yes, building an operator is part of it, but we want to offer a lot of services that would help you build a network function for Kubernetes, right? And delivery and packaging is, one aspect that's kind of painful, but I think we're figuring it out, right? The technologies already exist there. What we don't have is filling in the gaps in terms of how do we get, telco networking and configuration needs fulfilled on Kubernetes without having to reinvent the wheel every time for every vendor. So yeah, the value of Nefio has not been completely realized yet. R1, I think, is an opening shot, showing how we can deliver network functions, but we want to do more than deliver, right? There's this whole issue of configuration, what I call post stand-up configuration that we've only started to talk about in SIG number 1. So anyway, looking forward.
Yeah.
Sorry, Fikra, you had your hands up.
Yeah, Fiat try.
I think we're out of time, but I just wanted to add, like, I'm maybe a little, I'm new to all this stuff, but in terms of, I've no real graw for Helm myself, or I've no real love for Helm. Sorry, using Irish, but in terms of the, just to Stephen's last point in the chat, I would love to see, and I'm kind of new-ish to operators as well, but I would love to see and have a clear picture of what is the superiority of an operator over a Helm. And I know the gist of it, but I would love to see why the operator approach is so superior to Helm. And I guess it sounds like the discussion here, and the Flux approach or operator SDK, they're stopgap solutions, right, to bring vendors on board. But it sounds like it should be just an all-in on having some kind of conversion tool for a Helm chart to turn it into a cat package or something for an operator, to just go all in on that, and have the stopgap solutions there for vendors to use if they so wish.
Yeah. So just to Fiagra, maybe just to say one thing on why we are going for operator. For example, let's do in-service software or canary, right? Canary deployment. So to do so, what you typically need to do, right, is you basically deploy a new instance, right, as part of an existing cluster. You need to test it. You need to check whether everything is okay. And based on the results that you get, you basically say proceed or not, right?
Sure, I know.
Or roll back.
Yeah.
So try to do that with the Helm chart.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I take your point. Yeah.
So that's kind of where you have to look. What in an operator approach you can basically do. Whereas so Helm chart could be part of the execution, right? So don't get me wrong, right? So that means you can still have a Helm chart to basically say deploy this thing, right? And that's what I'm starting to advocate is we should not abandon the chart part, because the chart part has a piece in it that says, I need these KRM resources. Based on this input, I need these KRM resources. I'm proposing to reuse that whole mechanism in this approach, but use the operator where that chart rendering sits in. It's embedded in an operator that can do all the other pieces that I was talking about. You see? And if it's only deployment, it's basically a one-to-one relationship, right? In that case, the value is very minimal. But if you look at the other pieces that I was talking about, then the operator will be superior to a Helm chart, right? Than purely the Helm chart. And I think that's where we should go to. So to give you a bit of sense on a practical use case, that's why I am basically a proponent of an operator approach rather than a pure Helm chart.
Yeah,
because if you look at all the other scenarios that you want to support, it's better to start. Actually, we should have started to an operator, but at that time, I think the understanding was way less obvious than or more and more people start to understand why. And that's what you see if you purely look at deployment, what we are discussing for the most part. You can debate, right? I mean, what is the difference between a Helm chart and an operator? It's very limited. I fully agree with that.
Yeah.
But if you look at the other side,
I guess, yeah.
And that's where I think you see, if you really want to go to change configuration handling, finding triggers. So there's an event happening here. We see KPIs going up and down, and we need to do an action and stuff like that. That's where the operator framework becomes way more superior.
Right.
Gotcha. Yeah, I guess
I do believe that this is for SIG2 more than this group. For R2, hopefully we should really clearly demonstrate that the operator approach is actually better on many things, so that we can kind of get this debate a little less like heated. So we should be looking for features on development side or use cases where we can clearly demonstrate that the operator approach is better.
Yeah, I guess I came late to the party, so I didn't see the challenges that you went through with the free GC charts from there to operator. So, but yeah, no, it'd be great to see, Stephen. Yeah, that'd be something that would be helpful. I think.
Yes.
Yeah. Thanks.
Okay, I think we're over time. If everyone is done, we can close on the meeting.
Still have to get a shout out for Fiatra for doing all the work. Thank you.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Thanks, Fiatra.
Despite not being a Helm fan.
Yeah.
No problem. Yeah, I'm stirring the pot. We're just coming in to stir the pot, and then go on.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thanks everyone for a great discussion. By the way, I enjoyed it.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.